Sarah stared at the wedding ring on her finger, thoughts of divorce weighing heavily on her mind. 15 years of marriage had boiled down to one bitter realization. I can't live with a man who's turned into furniture. I'm only 42, and I've still got it. But what has Andrew become? Beer belly, basketball games, nothing but pure regression. I've got so much passion and desire left to give. Outside her 15th floor office window, Seattle's rainy skyline melted into the twilight. Somewhere in their luxury condo, her husband was waiting. Once upon a time, he'd been a promising architect, winning competitions, earning praise from colleagues who predicted a brilliant future. But something broke inside him when his firm went bankrupt 7 years ago. He took a teaching position at a community college, and gradually, all his ambitions evaporated. His students called him the ghost behind his back. His workday ended at 3, but somehow their home didn't feel any warmer for it. She had fallen in love with his talent and drive, but now his only ambition was catching the NBA playoffs on time. Tonight, though, everything would change. Tonight, she would finally tell him what she'd decided long ago. Maybe I'm asking for too much. The familiar thought pricked at her chest again. She glanced at her watch. 9:40 p.m. Another late night at the office. Another successfully closed deal. Another victory. But somehow, the triumph felt hollow. Her phone buzzed quietly. A message from Andrew. Honey, when are you coming home? I ordered your favorite pizza. Sarah smiled sadly. They'd been married for 15 years, and he knew perfectly well she didn't eat after 6. Strict orders from her personal trainer. But he kept pretending to forget that, just like he forgot so many other things. After hastily gathering her things and saying goodbye to the security guard, Sarah took the elevator down to the underground parking garage. Her silver Lexus stood alone in the corner under a dim light. The drive home took only half an hour, no traffic at this time of night. After parking at their upscale residential complex, Sarah sat in her car for several minutes collecting her thoughts. She knew exactly what she'd find when she went up to their condo. Andrew would be sprawled on the living room couch, staring at his laptop, surrounded by the usual chaos of a bachelor pad. Reaching her floor, Sarah pulled out her keys and hesitated before the door. The muffled sounds of TV filtered through. Some basketball game was on. Taking a deep breath, she unlocked the door. Sarah, that you? I'm watching the game. Blazers versus Lakers. Maybe this time our guys won't totally blow it. His voice carried from the living room. Sarah silently walked into the foyer, removed her high heels, and set her bag on the shelf. Only the small wall sconce was lit in the entryway. The main light had burned out a week ago, but Andrew still hadn't gotten around to changing the bulb. You know, Karen from 56 was telling me that Jack Peterson from the 5th floor fixed all the plumbing in her apartment himself. Can you believe it? He even installed the jacuzzi. Meanwhile, our fridge has been making that awful rattling noise for 2 months now. I keep thinking it might explode, Sarah said in her most neutral tone as she walked into the living room. Oh, that handyman. Andrew grimaced without taking his eyes off the screen. You know I don't trust these self-taught types. Let's call a proper repairman, have it done properly. Just leave me $500. I'll call tomorrow. When will we call? Next year. Or when I learn to fix appliances myself? Sarah felt irritation building inside her. Andrew, I'm tired of coming home to this mess every day and pretending everything's fine. I make 3 times what you do, but somehow I'm still expected to handle all the housework myself. Here we go again. Andrew sat up on the couch, scratched his belly under his t-shirt, and finally looked at his wife. You know I'm not cut out for all this domestic stuff. I'm a creative person. Why are you nagging like some old lady? Creative? Sarah snapped. The last time you created anything was 7 years ago. Now all you do is lie on the couch and watch basketball. You know, I had dreams of pursuing art too. I wanted to paint, but I chose stability. A career provided us with this condo, the cars, the vacations, bought all these appliances, by the way. And you? You can't even find the energy to take basic care of our home. A heavy silence fell over the room, broken only by the TV commentators droning. Andrew stared at the floor, nervously rubbing his chin. Sarah stood by the window, feeling tears rolling down her cheeks. I'm filing for divorce, she said quietly. I can't do this anymore. Either you pull yourself together and start making changes in your life, or we're better off going our separate ways. I don't want to spend the rest of my life carrying a man who's turned into a couch potato. Andrew flinched as if he'd been struck. For the first time in ages, something resembling fear flickered in his eyes. He opened his mouth to speak, but Sarah had already turned and rushed to the bedroom, slamming the door behind her. Morning greeted Andrew with an unusual silence. Sarah had already left for work. He'd heard her getting ready at 7, trying to be quiet. Usually, she'd always come to say goodbye, give him a quick peck on the cheek, but today the bedroom door had remained closed. He lay there, staring at the ceiling, feeling truly awful for the first time in years. His wife's words about divorce kept echoing in his head. Deep down, he knew she was right. He had let himself go, become a shadow of the man he once was, the kind of person he used to despise. His phone chimed softly, a message in the college faculty group chat. His classes were canceled today due to some event. Usually, such news would have delighted him, another excuse to lounge around at home. But now, the thought only filled him with disgust. Andrew dragged himself out of bed and walked to the window. The usual morning bustle filled the courtyard of their luxury complex. People hurrying about their business, walking dogs, climbing into expensive cars. His gaze inadvertently caught on a tall man in work overalls doing something near the entrance door. Jack, that jack of all trades from the fifth floor everyone had been talking about. Showing off again, Andrew thought with unexpected bitterness. This Jack had appeared in their building about a year ago, bought an apartment after his divorce. Just a regular engineer from a construction company, nothing special. Yet somehow, all the neighbor ladies held him up as an example to their husbands. What really got under Andrew's skin was how this handyman talked to Sarah. He'd caught them chatting in the courtyard several times, his wife laughing, clearly enjoying the conversation and in no hurry to get to work. And that upstart would smile so smugly, going on about his endless capabilities and achievements. A loud crack snapped Andrew out of his thoughts. He'd automatically grabbed the balcony door handle, and it came off in his hand. Cursing, he threw it to the floor. Another repair to add to his growing list of domestic failures. To hell with all this, Andrew marched determinedly to the bathroom. After showering and shaving properly for the first time in ages, he dressed in proper jeans and a button-down shirt instead of his usual stretched-out sweatpants. The mirror reflected a man who was still relatively young. Only the dark circles under his eyes, beer belly, and emerging double chin betrayed his sedentary lifestyle of recent years. When he went down to the courtyard, he hesitated before approaching Jack. The man was just finishing some minor repair on the entrance door and gathering his tools. "Good morning." Andrew tried to keep his voice as casual as possible. "I see you're improving our building again." Handymanning away. Jack turned around, surprise flickering across his face. Well, Andrew Thompson in the flesh. "Something wrong?" "Your lovely wife Sarah says you usually at this time." He trailed off, obviously searching for diplomatic words. "Usually at this time I'm lying on the couch. Is that what you wanted to say?" Andrew gave a bitter smirk. "Yeah, that was true. But everything comes to an end." Jack studied his neighbor carefully, as if evaluating something. Then suddenly he smiled, openly and friendfully. "You know it. I was just about to grab some coffee. Want to join? I've got a great coffee machine in my workshop. Picked it up for pennies on Craigslist, fixed it up myself, works like a charm now." Andrew wanted to refuse. His pride was still fighting. But the image of Sarah, her words about divorce, tipped the scales. Why not? He shrugged. Jack's workshop was located in the building's basement, a small space he'd bought from the management company. Andrew was surprised to find it immaculately organized, tools arranged precisely, blueprints and diagrams hanging on the walls. He couldn't help noticing the pages from men's magazines with provocative photos of models plastered in one corner. Have a seat. Jack gestured to a comfortable chair. Let me fix us that coffee. Sorry about the mess. Was fixing Mrs. Thompson's washing machine from the third floor yesterday. Mess? This place is cleaner than an operating room. Andrew chuckled. Listen, Jack. Can I call you Jack? I need help. Well, advice really. Man to man. Jack set a cup of aromatic coffee in front of him. Of course. Something broken. Yeah, my wife's broken. Just kidding. Andrew sipped the coffee and was surprised. It really was excellent. My life's broken. You know, I used to be an architect. A good one, actually. But now I can't even handle basic repairs in my apartment. My wife started talking about divorce yesterday. How about that? Ah, Jack drawled. So that's what got you off the couch. Well, we can work with that. What do you mean? Exactly what I said. You know, I went through a divorce myself. That's how I ended up here. Jack sat across from him. And you know what? Sometimes it's one hell of a wake-up call. Makes you take a good hard look in the mirror. Andrew felt irritation rising. So you think I think you're a talented guy who just forgot about it. Jack cut him off. Listen, Andrew, I've seen your projects. They're still up on your old firm's website. That stuff was seriously impressive. And you know what? Someone who understands all that Art Deco and modernist architecture can definitely fix a fridge or replace a door handle. Trust me. And if you only knew what opportunities it opens up. Though I guess that's not relevant since you're married. Andrew blinked in surprise. Not sure I follow that last bit. And you actually looked up my projects. Of course. I always like to know who my neighbors are and their wives. Jack smirked mischievously. And you know what's interesting? What you think is some kind of superpower is just a set of basic skills. Everything's on YouTube these days. You can take anything apart, understand how it works. It's like architecture. First the foundation, then the walls, then all the pretty stuff. I don't need to tell you that. Look, all these skills that seem like magic to some people. It's just a matter of understanding systems. Whether it's a building or a dishwasher, there's always a logical process. You of all people should get that. These lonely housewives around here, they're not really impressed by the repairs. They're impressed by a man who knows what he's doing, who takes charge. Remember when you used to do that with your designs? Andrew felt something stir inside him, a forgotten spark of pride perhaps, but there was also an unsettling undertone to Jack's words, especially when he mentioned lonely housewives. Well, enough philosophy. Jack stood up. Want to learn how to fix that rattling fridge of yours? Bet your wife would be impressed. Might even forget about that divorce talk. As they walked back to Andrew's condo, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was either making a huge mistake or taking the first step towards saving his marriage. Maybe both. Start with the fridge that's about to explode. Jack confidently strode into the apartment, carrying his substantial toolbox. Andrew nervously glanced at the clock. It was around 2 in the afternoon. Sarah wasn't due home until evening. Sure, he led his neighbor to the kitchen, noting how intently Jack examined their condo's interior. A recent conversation with Marina, their building's concierge, suddenly popped into his mind. You know, Mr. Thompson, how Jack helped Susan from the 8th floor. She was such a mess after her divorce, but he fixed her faucet, hung some shelves, and well, she's absolutely glowing now. Say she finally has a real man around. Andrew hadn't given much thought to the concierge's strange tone then. Now, watching Jack skillfully handle the tools, he suddenly realized that the man did radiate a certain confidence. The kind that typically made women lose their heads. Well, simple problem, need to replace the motor winding. Jack's voice snapped him out of his thoughts. We'll fix it right up. By the way, why didn't your wife call me directly? Usually the ladies in the building call me themselves. What, you running an official service now? Andrew raised an eyebrow. Jack gave an odd smirk. You could say that. Let's just say I have my own approach to solving various domestic problems. Word of mouth. You know, one satisfied customer brings 2 more. Just then, They heard the sound of the front door opening. Andrew startled. Sarah never came home this early. Honey, are you home? Can you believe they canceled our? Sarah's voice cut off mid-sentence as she saw the two men in the kitchen. Her gaze lingered on Jack's figure a moment longer than it should have. Hello, Mrs. Thompson. Jack flashed that special smile Andrew had already noticed. Just helping your husband with some repairs. He's turning out to be quite a capable student. Really? Sarah's surprised look bounced between her husband and neighbor. Andrew, you decided to learn some hands-on skills. Yes, dear, Andrew quickly interrupted. Jack kindly offered to show me a few tricks. Turns out it's not as complicated as it seems. Oh, Jack's quite the master at what he does. Sarah smiled. I've heard so much about your talents from the neighbors. You helped Susan after her divorce, right? And Karen from Unit 5. The golden hands of our building. And not just them, Jack replied quietly, maintaining eye contact with Sarah. You know, single women often need help. And I just can't say no to a lady in distress. Andrew felt something unpleasant stir in his chest. The atmosphere in the kitchen suddenly became thick and heavy, like before a storm. I think we should get back to the fridge. He deliberately stood between his wife and neighbor. Sarah, you must be tired. Maybe you should go rest? Oh no, honey. I'm so interested in watching you two work. Maybe I'll make some tea. There were new, unfamiliar notes in Sarah's voice. The next hour became a special kind of torture for Andrew. He tried hard to focus on Jack's explanations about windings, relays, and freeing, but his peripheral vision kept catching Sarah, accidentally appearing in the neighbor's line of sight, fixing her hair, laughing too brightly at his jokes. And the jokes grew increasingly suggestive. You know, Mrs. Thompson, the key to any machinery is finding the right approach, knowing where to put your hands, gentle but firm. Jack would say, and Andrew could swear these words carried a double meaning. Amazing. Sarah breathed admiringly when the fridge finally worked without rattling. Jack, you're simply magical. Now I understand why all the neighbors are crazy about you. Oh, please. Jack smiled that signature smile again. I just have experience handling temperamental mechanisms. By the way, Mrs. Thompson, if anything else breaks when your husband's not home, here's my card. I'm always available. Andrew felt nausea rising in his throat. Had he really just invited into his home a man who? No, that's just paranoia. Jack couldn't possibly be. Oh, thank you. Sarah made an exaggerated gesture of tucking the card into her blouse's neckline. You know, we've got a floor lamp in the bedroom that's acting up. Maybe you could take a look? The bedroom. Andrew spun around sharply. No, we're not going to the bedroom today. I'll look at it myself. Jack, thanks for your help, but we need to wrap this up. As you wish. Jack started gathering his tools, but his gaze slid over Sarah's figure one more time. It was a pleasure getting to know you better, Mrs. Thompson. And remember, I'm always ready to help. When the neighbor left, a strange silence fell over the apartment. Sarah hummed happily in the kitchen, clattering dishes louder than usual. And Andrew stood by the window, watching Jack walk across the courtyard, the concierge's phrase echoing in his head. Finally has a real man around. Suddenly, he noticed Susan from the 8th floor, that divorced woman the neighbors gossiped about, practically floating out of the building entrance. She accidentally bumped into Jack, and they started an animated conversation. Andrew watched her flirtatiously fix her hair, exactly the same gesture Sarah had used in the kitchen earlier. That's when it hit him. All that talk about helping lonely ladies, all those ambiguous smiles and innuendos, he'd had nearly invited a wolf in sheep's clothing into his home. Worse yet, he'd led him right to his wife. What a mess. Honey, don't worry. Sarah carefully perched on the edge of the couch where Andrew was checking his morning emails. I think our bathroom drain is clogged. But you head to the college. I already called Jack. This isn't something you can handle yourself. He promised to stop by in an hour. I'm sure he'll figure it out. I'll pay him myself. Andrew jerked upright, nearly knocking over his laptop. What do you mean you called Jack? You're exchanging phone numbers with him now? Well, yes, he gave me his card. And anyway, all the neighbors say that he... No, Andrew jumped up from the couch. No, Jack, I'll fix it myself. Sweetie, Sarah's voice took on that condescending tone. You've never dealt with plumbing before. Maybe we shouldn't. But Andrew was already marching to the bathroom, Googling how to unclog a drain on his phone. 5 minutes later, he returned, grabbed his car keys, and rushed out to the hardware store. Sarah sighed heavily and pulled out her phone. Hey, Susan, you won't believe it. My better half suddenly decided to fix everything himself. Yeah, what a letdown. I was so hoping Jack would come. You told me how skilled he is. What? He really knows how to clean out pipes. Oh well, guess I'll never find out. Meanwhile, Andrew was racing through Home Depot, loading his cart with every possible plunger, snake, and chemical cleaner. The sales associate watched his frantic efforts with sympathy. First time dealing with a clog? That obvious. Andrew muttered, yeah, usually guys just grab one thing, but you look like you're trying to buy out the whole plumbing department. Whatever, I just need to keep that neighbor out of my house, Andrew mumbled under his breath. Returning home with a trunk full of tools, he found Sarah nervously pacing the hallway. Honey, maybe we should still. No, Andrew rolled up his sleeves determinedly. It'll be fixed in no time. The next hour turned into a complete farce. First, the plunger slipped from his hands and sprayed in with dirty water. Then the drain snake somehow managed to tangle itself around the faucet. When he tried to pour in the chemical cleaner, the bottle slipped from his wet hands and spilled across the floor. Andrew, maybe that's enough? Sarah covered her mouth, clearly suppressing laughter. Jack's probably free by now. I said no, Jax. Andrew growled, yanking the plunger for the 10th time. And suddenly, miracle, the water started gurgling down. Got it. He triumphantly threw up his hands, forgetting he was still holding the wet plunger. Dirty spray splattered across the freshly painted walls. Sarah rolled her eyes. Well, congratulations, dear. Now we need to renovate the bathroom. We will, Andrew exclaimed enthusiastically. The next few weeks became a real marathon for Andrew. Days were spent teaching at the college, evenings hunting down everything in the apartment that worked poorly or not at all. Gradually, his hands began remembering what it was like to create something. His architectural background emerged. He started noticing interesting solutions, thinking up improvements. Sarah observed these changes with mixed feelings. On one hand, her husband had finally stopped being a couch potato. On the other, he now categorically rejected any outside help and got especially agitated at any mention of Jack. To outsiders, their family now appeared to be the picture of domestic bliss. Sarah beamed with a satisfied smile when neighbors asked about their renovations and proudly showed off their updated bathroom. At building meetings, she demonstratively held her husband's arm and constantly praised his golden hands. Even Jack's greetings became more curt, clearly understanding this home was now off limits to him. Andrew savored his victory. He hadn't just saved his marriage but reclaimed his crown as the main man of the house. Yet sometimes he caught strange looks from his wife when she thought he wasn't watching. In those moments, her smile became slightly forced, and something like regret flickered in her eyes. All would have been fine, but one evening, while sorting through papers in his home office, Andrew stumbled upon an old folder of receipts. Mechanically flipping through the bills, he suddenly froze. 2 invoices, dated from last year, main drain line cleaning, and leak repair. At the bottom, a bold signature, J. Peterson. Andrew sank slowly into his chair. So Jack had been in their apartment before, during those days when he was at the college. Sarah had never mentioned it. He raised his eyes and met his reflection in the window glass. Now he could fix anything in the house, had mastered dozens of new skills, regained his wife's respect. But these 2 receipts burned in his hands, making him wonder, had he really gotten off that couch in time? He glanced back at the receipts, studying the casual scrawl of Jack's signature. Each loop and curve seemed to mock him now. The dates aligned perfectly with his teaching schedule, those long afternoons when Sarah would have been home alone. How many other receipts might there be? How many other repairs had gone undocumented? The sounds of Sarah humming in the kitchen drifted through the door. She'd been so proud of him lately, showing off their renovated bathroom to neighbors, bragging about his newfound handyman skills. But now he wondered about the true meaning behind those strange, almost regretful looks she sometimes gave him. Was she comparing his work to Jack's? And if so, what kind of work was she really thinking about? Andrew turned back to the window, watching the lights come on in the luxury condo complex as evening settled in. Somewhere in this building, Jack was probably preparing for his next house call. How many other husbands had handed their wives' numbers to him, thinking they were just being practical? How many other marriages had he fixed? The revelation sat heavy in his stomach. He'd won the battle for his home, reclaimed his role as the man of the house. But these two pieces of paper raised a question he wasn't sure he wanted answered. Had he started his transformation too late? Had Jack already left his mark on their marriage in ways that no amount of home improvement could repair? He carefully placed the receipts back in the folder. Some things, he decided, were better left unexplored. What mattered was the present, and right now, his wife was in their kitchen, in their home, which he had learned to maintain with his own hands. Whatever happened during those long afternoons last year would stay locked away with these receipts, gathering dust in the filing cabinet of their shared past. "Honey," Sarah's voice called from the kitchen. "The dishwasher's making a funny noise. Should I call?" "I'll take a look at it." Andrew cut her off. Standing up, he tucked the folder back into the drawer and closed it firmly. "I'll fix it myself."